Good morning, sports fans, and welcome to the Fantasy Fallout podcast with your humble host, Michael Schussler, fantasy expert, Charm City Cash Cow, head writer, editor, content manager of whatsonsports.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Sports Trading Systems, which allows you to trade sports like everyone else out there trades stocks. Easy way to make some money every weekend, especially during the NFL. They've been having an excellent season so far, much like myself, who back-to-back weeks winning my DraftKings lineup. We can talk about that going forward. We'll talk about the Week 14 call-outs that I made last week that panned out, my biggest hits, my biggest misses, some of the best fantasy performances from NFL superstars that we saw this week, Week 14. We'll talk about Lamar Jackson and those Baltimore Ravens beating the Cleveland Browns last night on the game of the year so far in the NFL. And then we'll even dive in to my own personal fantasy league, and I'll have a special guest to bring in for that as well, which we'll get to. But first, last week, I called out a couple names of some fringe players that a lot of people maybe were nervous to start, maybe were on waivers, guys who you wouldn't expect to really have a great game. But a lot of them came through. So my biggest hits for the first week of the fantasy playoffs, which was this week, Week 14, okay? T.Y. Hilton. I mean, it's been tough to trust him, but he's been on the same page as Phillip Rivers for the past couple weeks. They're really starting to get it together. That was obvious this week as he had 5 catches for 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of his best performances of the year. Same goes with Mike Davis, okay, running back for the Carolina Panthers, another guy who had been tough to trust, tough to start in Christian McCaffrey, Dippin' Dot, CMC's absence. He had 93 total yards and 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for Mike Davis. You love to see that. Those are 2 of my bigger hits. But to be fair, I had some misses too. One of them came with Giovanni Bernard, who fumbled on his first carry and then was benched until the third quarter and only got 6 total touches after that. Disappointing for Giovanni Bernard. And, I just don't trust him going forward. You can't. You just can't. The Bengals are not good. Giovanni Bernard is not very good. Unstartable in fantasy. Going forward, it's tough. It's going to be tough to start him. Another miss, Ty Johnson, okay, for the New York Jets, who had 22 carries last week and over 100 yards. And then he had 8 carries yesterday. Or I'm sorry, on Sunday. 8 carries for 16 yards, no targets. All right, Frank Gore got 8 carries. Josh Adams had 6 carries. So that is now a committee in the running back area, and it is just frustrating. They're the Jets anyway, so it's not like you were really relying on them to do anything for you. But you would have liked to see Ty Johnson expand his role. If he got 22 carries on 100 yards last week, why go away from him? Why are we relying on old man Frank Gore? That's Adam Gase. Somehow still has a job. We'll get to that later. Other guys who came through that I mentioned, Cam Akers, who I've been touting for weeks, saying that this guy is the lead back for the Los Angeles Rams. That's what Sean McVay wants to do. They want to have one workhorse back. Cam Akers on Thursday night had 29 carries for 171 yards. He's the guy, okay? Those are bell cow numbers. There's no more argument. There's no more committee in Los Angeles. It is the Cam Akers show. Will be for years to come. Okay? And then Kiki Cutie and Tim Patrick. 2 other guys who didn't necessarily, they didn't explode. They didn't have wonderful games, but they both caught a touchdown. I don't know what more you can ask for. So those were some of my hits last week. And like I said, I did pretty well. And we move on to the best performances of Week 14, which is always a difficult thing. But it's our usual suspects at the top. Derrick Henry, highest fantasy point scorer of the week, another monster game, 215 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who Henry just eats against. Okay, and it's the fantasy playoffs. Everyone jokes you might as well call it the Derrick Henry League or Derrick Henry Invitational, because he does just absolutely go off on weeks 14, 15, and 16 every year. And that's got to be because teams are just tired of tackling him. I mean, defenses are beat up. They've been playing for 2 months, 3 months. They're tired. They're worn down. And then you get that guy bulldozing at you for 60 minutes. It's impossible. Love Derrick Henry, obviously. All right, and then my boy Lamar Jackson. Heart of a lion. Bladder of a 5-year-old. Okay? Had the highest scoring week of the year for Lamar Jackson. All right, he had 124 rushing yards, which is his most of the year, 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 passing, showing everyone why he was the MVP last year. And, we're not counting the Baltimore Ravens out yet. All right. To me, when Lamar plays like that, they're still a top 3 team in the AFC, maybe top 2 behind the Chiefs. So why the Ravens are in playoff mode. They're going to continue to play like that. Heart of a lion with Lamar. Absolutely fantastic. Game of the year, like I said, and we will touch on that later in the show. But we'll continue with our best performances of Week 14. Aaron Rodgers, the best fantasy performance that he's had all year. 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing. Aaron Rodgers making his candidacy for MVP even arguably over Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's really tough to say. I wish they could give out one for the AFC, one for the NFC like they do in Major League Baseball. But they don't. Those 2 guys are neck and neck in the MVP race. I would say that, Patrick Mahomes has a little more to work with, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't. Yes, he has Devontae Adams, best receiver in the league. Hands down now. No more conversation on that. Aaron Jones, top 5 back. Okay. But then you got Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, Le'Veon Bell is their second string running back in Kansas City. So he does, Patrick Mahomes does have a lot of help there. Then we have, Stefan Diggs in the top 10 for fantasy scorers of Week 14. He had 10 catches for 130 yards and a score, absolutely demolished the Pittsburgh Steelers. He and Josh Allen in that second quarter, or in the second half, shut the door on the Steelers and exposed them as what I have been saying, the fakest 11-0 team that I'd ever seen. They're 11-2 now. Who knows? They could lose out and end the season at 11-5, and then it's like a 3-way tie: Ravens, Browns, Steelers. Who knows? There is a path that all 3 of them make the postseason or make the playoffs this year. We'll see about that. Another top 10 performer is Travis Kelsey, who now has 8 catches in 6 straight weeks from a tight end. Back-to-back identical stat lines here with 8 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown. Same exact thing, Week 13. He does it again, Week 14. Travis Kelsey coming through every week, especially in the fantasy playoffs. Unbelievable. Then we have Allen Robinson, another usual suspect at the top 10 fantasy performer. He tied his season high in yardage at 123 yards receiving on 9 catches with a touchdown. So these guys are all coming through with like season best performances when we need them the most. Week 14, first week of the fantasy playoffs. Gotta love it. These are guys that we've been counting on all year, and they continue to come through. And here's a few surprising guys to round out the top 10 this week. And that's top 10 fantasy scorers in a point per reception league. Okay. Surprising guy, Jonathan Taylor, as the number 4 overall scorer this week. 20 carries, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Great game. This is what you had hoped as a Jonathan Taylor owner. Okay. When you give him 20 carries, 20 plus carries, all he does is produce. There's no reason why he shouldn't be used as a RB1 workhorse lead back for the Colts going forward. I know some people out there love Jonathan Taylor, took him early in a lot of fantasy leagues. Hasn't been paying off as much as you had hoped until recently. But now that we're in crunch time, you hope that they just continue to roll with that. You love to see that from Jonathan Taylor. Another surprising guy is Baker Mayfield, who had his best game of the year fantasy-wise against the Baltimore Ravens last night on Monday Night Football. Man, I didn't see that coming. I mean, I thought it'd be a close game. I didn't think there would be 80-plus points scored. I didn't think Baker would, throw for 2 touchdowns and run for 1. He had his highest passing yardage of the year at 343. Now, under 60% completion percentage against the Ravens, but hell of a performance from Baker and the Browns. Nick Chubb with 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt with 2 touchdowns, which we'll talk about later, but still, love to see that from Baker. I mean, I don't know how many people would have even started him. He's only rostered in 28% of leagues, so if you were ballsy enough to start Baker last night, good on you. Best performance of the year so far for him. Then we finally saw Miles Sanders with his best performance of the year. 115 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. As the Eagles were led by Jalen Hurts, another guy I predicted who I wasn't sure how he'd really do against the Saints, but he is the guy going forward, and he should be. He had over 100 rushing yards in his starting debut. But Miles Sanders breaking off that 80-yard touchdown. Love to see him finally getting the touches that he deserves, as he was a first-round overall pick in fantasy drafts this year as well. First or second round. Then, like I mentioned, Kareem Hunt last night. He and Nick Chubb kind of ran all over the Ravens. Now, it was a tough game. Ravens come out on top, but Kareem Hunt had 100 total yards, 6 receptions for 77 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving, 6 receptions for 77 yards. You love that passing game work from Kareem Hunt. I mean, that 1-2 punch with him and Nick Chubb, absolutely phenomenal. Best in the league. So I mentioned that I would be bringing in a special guest today. So this is the first time that I've had this gentleman on the show. He's someone very near and dear to me. I've known him. I've known him for 20 years. Taught him everything he knows, which he'll tell you is the truth, especially fantasy-wise. This is my younger brother, Zack Schussler. He plays Division I football for St. Francis in the NEC. It's a shame his season was canceled this year, but one good thing is I have him here ready to bring on the show. There he is. Zack, how are you, bro?
Good. How you doing, Mike? And just a point on that Derrick Henry thing, playing inside linebacker myself, when you have to deal with a 230-pound, 6'4" monster in the backfield, and then you have to worry about play action A.J. Brown scoring 37 one-hand touchdowns. You have to focus on a lot of things, and when 22 is coming downhill at you, it's a scary sight. Yeah, I feel for those linebackers that have to try and tackle him.
It's got to hurt, right? Because, I mean, it's also cold. It's December, and that guy's just barreling through at you. Like, it's unfair.
Of course, adrenaline's pumping and stuff like that, but 230 pounds lowering his shoulder, and the way he runs, he never stops his legs. He never stops. He just keeps churning. Yeah.
And that's what everyone says. Now, you'll know obviously much better than me, much better than probably a lot of our listeners. So, like, everyone says the way to tackle Derrick Henry is you got to hit him low, right? But is it easier said than done, I guess is what we're saying.
Very much easier said than done. And a guy like Derrick Henry, who's that strong, when you hit him low, you might make the tackle, but he's probably going to carry you for 6 more yards. So, yeah, you hit him low, but if he's getting 8 yards a pop, it really doesn't help much.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute beast. And like I said, at this time of the year where he's just been trucking all year, defenses are a little bruised and beat up. he's not stopping, and it's impossible. But hey, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
And I mentioned that your season had gotten canceled, unfortunately. But what's going on right now? Like, are you guys, obviously you're home, and so that's why you're able to join me here. What's going on with like workout routines? Do they have you on a set routine to stay in shape? Are you having Zoom meetings? What's going on with that? Can you give us a little insider information on anything?
So we still have weekly Zoom meetings with the strength and conditioning coach and then your individual position coach. And they gave us a strength sheet before we left for winter break to follow. It's 4 workouts a week with some conditioning workouts. Basically, they want to prep us to come back for the spring. We are having a shortened season in the spring, 4 guaranteed games. Plus, if you're a top 2 seed in our conference, the Northeastern Conference, you go to the championship game for a bid in the FCS playoffs. So I'm excited that we have something to play for there. But yeah, you have a weekly schedule to follow, and you fill it out with a pencil or online, and you give it back to your strength coach so they see what progress you've been making, stuff like that. And as far as scheme and stuff goes, it's really hard to put in new plays and stuff like that over Zoom without actually being able to walk through it and make the calls, because there's a lot of moving parts, especially at that level. Everybody kind of has to know what everybody's doing. So I'll be excited once I can get back and we can get to work for this spring season.
Absolutely. Now, this is my brother, Zack Schussler. He plays for the St. Francis Red Flash, Division I football in the NCAA and the NEC. Now, as the middle linebacker, when you talk about knowing where everyone has to be, with your defensive scheme, you're the leader of the defense. At least, you're the play caller. You're the quarterback essentially of the defense. Is that right?
I get the call from the defensive coordinator, relay it to the defense, and then set the defense depending on wherever we want to shift the strength of our defense. So, say it was a passing down, maybe it's 3rd and 8, and the offense comes out, trips left. I'm going to want to set the strength of the defense to the left so that our nickel back would be there to help out on the 3 receiver side. Basically, it's really a game of strategy.
It's a chess match, right? You're lining up, and that's wow. So yeah, there's so much that goes into it. I know we don't even have time to get into it all today, but we'll talk about that more going forward. And I love watching games with you. Like just on Sunday or if it's a Thursday night, whenever we're watching the Ravens together, and you're always calling out. You're just looking at defensive schemes, things that I would never notice. Or I remember like Patrick Queen a couple times this year. The Ravens, give up an 8-yard run or something, and you're like, that's Patrick Queen. Like that was on Patrick Queen. He needs to be in the right spot. It's just really cool to get that kind of information from you, as we're sitting there watching it, which brings me to last night's game. I mean, how did that feel? Like game of the year, right? So far, that's what everyone's saying, but it had to have been. What'd you think?
I think so. I think it kind of resembled that Kansas City and Los Angeles game on Monday Night Football in Mexico City when it was 54-51 and a lot of scores in the last 2 minutes. But this game had even more dramatics because the Lamar cramps to the locker room. Did he have cramps? Did he really have diarrhea? He claimed on Twitter he was not taking a poop. He swears, but I don't know.
Didn't Paul Pierce say that too?
Yeah. Paul Pierce said it too, but I think we all know he just wants to see some face. But
he was in there for a while though. He was, but perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. From the beginning of the fourth quarter right to the 2-minute warning.
Yeah, it's like, dude, come on. So do you think he was maybe like some food poisoning from a Cleveland pizza shop or something like that? I'm just saying.
Maybe. Cleveland, they are, man. They do want to beat the Ravens.
It's Cleveland. I wouldn't put it past them.
No. I wouldn't put it past them. The Trace McSorley saga was interesting to say the least because we might have been in position to drive down the field and put the game away without having Lamar if Marquise Brown catches the ball.
That guy, dude.
Yeah. 3 drops in the fourth quarter, something like that.
Yeah, no, he redeemed himself obviously with that last play, but I'm kind of over Marquise Brown, especially as a first round pick. And like I always mention, we took him before DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. It's frustrating. to see like this is what we got. And for someone who runs his mouth as much as Hollywood Brown does, he doesn't catch the ball enough. Like that's his job. That's your job. Catch the ball. So that is frustrating. But another thing that we always talk about, when we were watching the Ravens defense, Marlon Humphreys. Right. And dude, he had 2 forced fumbles in the first half that we didn't recover. But that's his game. Like I don't know how. Maybe there's some, I don't know what you do, or he's always punching. But he's always able to connect and get that ball loose. But, as a Ravens fan, you can't ask, as a Ravens team or a coach, you can't ask for more than 2 forced fumbles from the guy. And he gave them both to us in the first half, and we couldn't capitalize. That was a little frustrating.
I'd say he speaks to it. He says he watches film on every receiver that he's going to be matched up on. And he watches the smallest things, the way they hold the ball when they cut, the way they hold the ball when they catch a slant route versus when they catch an out route. All these different type of little details. Yeah, he talked about it. I forget what show he on. I think Deion Sanders was interviewing him on Barstool. But he talked about this, and it was really interesting to see. Does that excuse him from that play at the goal line where he essentially was he trying to let them score because he wanted Lamar to get the ball back? I thought maybe he was saying let him score and let's go finish the game, which ended up happening. But it was poor effort. But the forced fumbles from Marlon Humphrey are great. I still think he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Obviously, I think T.J. Watt and Xavier Howard are probably the top 2, but I'd say Marlon is a lower tier candidate.
I would absolutely 100% agree. You bring up Xavier Howard. Did you see that interception he made on Patrick Mahomes in the end zone? I mean, come on. Like, what are you supposed to do? What can you do?
You know what? If Xavier Howard didn't make that play, it's another Tyreek Hill touchdown. So someone had to make a play there, and Xavier did. I think that's league-leading 9th interception.
Yep.
It's like unheard of.
I know. So, yeah, I mean, he's a Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, T.J. Watt has been amazing for the Steelers, too. But my money's on Xavier Howard right now. It's because, there was some prop bet of Xavier Howard will intercept Patrick Mahomes. And it was I think it was like plus 350 or something.
Probably, yeah.
And I was like, damn, I should probably take that. But then I was like, it's Patrick Mahomes. Maybe not. Yeah. He threw 3 interceptions, by the way, which is a little crazy. But anyway, that Ravens-Browns game, it was a great game. As a Ravens fan, love to see it. I had Lamar Jackson in DraftKings for a Sunday and Monday slate, which I ended up winning. All because of Lamar single-handedly winning me that contest. And there was a lot of mixed emotions for you, I understand, because as I brought up, our fantasy league, the Kanishi Keeper League, which is me and my brothers, a couple of friends. It's a very competitive league, and there's a lot of heartbreak and a lot of effort that goes into it. You were playing against Lamar and Mark Andrews last night, right?
I was, and I had went into Sunday Night Football up by 12 points with Ben Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson. Of course, Deontay turns into Deontay Dropson in the first quarter. Gets benched for the entirety of the rest of the first half, was able to salvage 6 total fantasy points. Ben throws 2 picks. But anyway, I go into Monday Night Football up by 31, first round of the playoffs, and it sucked for me. As a huge diehard Ravens fan, I had to cheer for the Steelers and then cheer against Lamar, but Lamar really single-handedly destroyed my fantasy playoff hopes with those 2 first-half touchdowns, man.
Yeah, that's brutal. But I mean, you kind of love to see it, right?
Honestly, fantasy season's over. It is a keeper league, so it's always like, okay, at least I have next year, and you have a few calls to bring back. But if the Ravens make the playoffs, if we win out, I'll say it was worth it.
Well, exactly, right. And it was the game of the year. Like, I know it's tough. There's always next year. You're always competitive in this league. And, one thing about your matchup that was kind of brutal, Aaron Jones, like, I thought Aaron Jones was gonna have 4 touchdowns against Detroit. He ended up only getting 8.5 fantasy points. He had 69 rushing yards, but only 2 receptions for 6 yards, 8.5 fantasy points. And Deontay only getting 6. Darren Waller even coming in a little short for you with 11, which, is just below his average.
Corey Davis.
Corey Davis, Adam Thielen. So you had some tough breaks. You did have Miles Sanders go off for you, who I touched on earlier. But that is a brutal loss, and you hate to see it, but you do love that Lamar went off. And at least it was for a good cause, and at least it was a close game. If the Ravens were blowing out the Browns, and Lamar, the win was already, we had already guaranteed the win, and Lamar's driving down the field and going off, that's frustrating. But at least it was a close game, and he was able to keep you in, or keep the Ravens in. He had to do what he had to do. That's a tough loss. So
yeah, it was. The thing about Aaron Jones that hurts is among running backs, he's top 3 in the league in yards per touch. I believe only behind Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. The thing that sucks is he's outside of the top 25 in total touches, which is insane. Like, why do they give Jamal Williams the ball so much? It doesn't make sense.
No. Same thing with J.K. Dobbins. Now Gus Edwards had 2 touchdowns last night, and I don't think Mark Ingram saw the field.
So I don't recall seeing Mark Ingram.
Me neither. And he was active. He was healthy. He was dressed, but he did not play. So I actually do like to see that. At least it's going to be a 2-headed monster going forward with Dobbins and Gus Edwards. But, like you said, with Aaron Jones, you got to get him the ball more. Like, it doesn't make sense to not feed him. I know it's Aaron Rodgers and, it's Devontae Adams. But after those two, Aaron Jones is your guy, and he should be getting 20-plus touches a game. So that is frustrating as a first-round pick, which he was in many fantasy drafts. I know you took him in a couple leagues this year.
I took him in the first round of both leagues, and I really didn't regret the decision until this week, because he's still like running back 5. He does great on a limited amount of touches. It just, you wish you could see him get some of these Dalvin Cook or James Robinson or Myles Gaskin, where they're just feeding them the ball over and over. They don't use him as a cowbell. Maybe that's to save them for the playoffs, because they feel like they will be a playoff team. But at the same time, for fantasy purposes, all you want to do is see 33 get the ball.
I'm with you. That's a good point. Do you think that the Ravens are saving, J.K. Dobbins' workhorse numbers for the playoffs? And that could be, why he's not getting 20 touches a game, where sometimes he only gets single digit, 9 carries or something.
And watching J.K. Dobbins over the past few weeks, he'll have a run that seems like it's going to be, a 3-yard and then stuff, and somehow he'll just keep churning, and he'll turn it into a first down. I've seen it a lot of times over the past few weeks. Really exciting to me as a Ravens fan. But how do you phase out Gus Edwards and Mark Ingram, who both have sizable contracts? Ingram, of course, bigger than Edwards. Hopefully DaCosta, I feel like he could get a good piece for at least one of them moving forward, if we're going to use JK as a franchise back.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't think about him, breaking up that backfield, but Mark Ingram's locker room presence and leadership and just his overall demeanor and attitude, I think, is so good for the team that it's almost worth it, his contract, even if he doesn't play, because we have so much young talent on that team. We need a former Heisman Trophy winner, with a lot of playoff experience that Mark Ingram has on the Saints. So,
Mark Ingram's getting $9 million this year. You can't be a $9 million cheerleader in the NFL. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Good point. Okay, good point. Yeah. So, DaCosta will figure something out.
He's very smart.
Yeah. Well, Zach, thanks for joining me, dude. Love talking to you. Love watching the games with you. We're about to wrap up, but before we do, again, I just want to thank our sponsors, Sports Trading Systems, who allow you to trade sports like you trade stocks, of course, in states that is legal, and adults who are eligible for those benefits. Before we close out, Zach, I know you're out of the Kenichi League, and I'm sorry, it is Keeper League. You'll come back next year. You're always competitive. But I had a first-round bye thanks to J.K. Dobbins' last-minute touchdown last week.
Right.
Which, was absolutely wonderful. Love to see that. So now I am matched up with our younger brother,
Oh yeah.
There's another one, everyone out there. And he's projected to beat me. I don't even really pay attention to these projections. They're garbage usually. He's projected to beat me by 10, and to be honest, I'm scared. I'm scared of his team. Listen. Here's who he has. All right, he has Josh Allen at quarterback, Nick Chubb, Raheem Mostert, T.Y. Hilton, who just went off, and then he's got Travis Kelsey at the tight end and Jonathan Taylor in his flex. I mean, like I said, I'm scared. I'm nervous, and I don't know. I know you probably don't care as much now, but what do you think my chances are going in? Here's who I have. I got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, who I would say matches up with Josh Allen pretty well. Like me, hopefully they cancel each other out. My running backs, Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler, but Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor, I kind of feel like he has the edge there. He definitely has the edge on receivers as he has, Ty. I guess actually, you know what? I don't know. Our receivers are kind of even. He's got Ty and Chad Henson, who's actually not even good. I have Juju Smith-Schuster and DJ Chark, who have been pretty frustrating. So, I mean, Juju's caught touchdowns in, I think, 3 straight games. So, I'm all right with that. But like I said, I'm a little nervous. I mean, Wyatt might get DJ Moore back for this week. And he would obviously, or even Jamison Crowder, if he's healthy, he could slot either of those 2 guys in instead of Hansen. So he clearly has the edge on tight end with Travis Kelsey. I don't know. What do you think my chances are?
I believe Mostert tweaked his hamstring in the second half of the game on Sunday, so that's something for you to watch out for. But Hansen, if Hansen's his number 2 wide receiver and he wins, he's pretty lucky, man. I know he's had a lot of injuries, but hearing you guys talk about your wide receivers when I have Thielen, Keenan Allen, and Deontay Johnson, and I lost, it hurts. It hurts.
Man. I'm sorry to bring that up. I am. But he has been getting so lucky. Wyatt has, our younger brother. He beat me by just 1 point last night in a different league, in a super flex half-point PPR league where I had Justin Tucker and Kareem Hunt, and I needed like 36 points between them, and I got like 35 and a half. Wow.
Speaking of that, that last play, the hook and ladder type of play where it started off with Kareem Hunt over the middle for 7 yards. Those counted. That counted as points for you. But last year, if you remember when the Chiefs did that play where they threw it to Kelsey and then Kelsey gave it to Tyreek Hill,
right?
Well, the points did not count for Kelsey there. So what is the statute for fantasy? Because I remember that. Me and Wyatt were talking about that earlier. What's the statute for the backwards lateral? How does that get scored?
As a fantasy expert, I should probably know the answer to this, and I don't. The way here's how it should be broken down. Now, even though I'm the commissioner and league manager in like every league that I'm in, I don't think I have the ability to make this change, but here's what I would do. You give the reception and the initial yardage to Travis Kelsey or Kareem Hunt, who catches the ball. There's your reception. He catches it for 7 yards. Okay. And then as he runs down the field after 7 yards, once he laterals, that's where his points stop. Okay.
Now, the other yards rushing?
The other yards should just be straight up rushing yards for whoever laterals. If Kareem Hunt laterals to Jarvis Landry and he rushes for 13, Landry should get 13 rushing yards. And then at 13 yards down the field, Landry laterals to Baker Mayfield, and Baker, loses 6 yards and gets sacked or gets a safety in the end zone, whatever. He should lose 0.6 points and 6 rushing yards on his stat line. That's how I see it, because those are rushing. Like, let's say that they run all the way down the field on that play. Those are still rushing yards that have to be attributed somewhere on the stat sheet. So it does get confusing, but with the technology that we have, and we should be able to kind of, get that into our fantasy algorithm there. We have a comment here. It says Montgomery, Taylor, and Akers are league winners. Yeah, absolutely.
David Montgomery out of the woodworks.
I know. I never trusted him. You can't trust him.
Trubisky's had them put up 2 back-to-back 30-point games for their offense, 30 or more points, which who would have thought?
Who would have thought Matt Nagy would still have a job after going 5-1?
That's true.
Like, and maybe he won't. But if Trubisky's making him look like a genius here, hey, that's Mitchell Trubisky, dude. So that's a good comment there. We have another. Is that Division I athlete Zack Schussler? Oh my! Yes, it is.
In the flesh.
Yes, it is, Nick. Yeah, he's in the flesh. I mean, how lucky am I to have you on my show? Truly, I truly thank you. Keep working out, getting big, getting ready for the spring season. I'm so excited to be able to actually come. Hopefully I can actually be there and watch some of your games in person. I don't know what the university or stadium, COVID restrictions will be. I'm sure you don't really know. They don't tell you much about anything like that. And it's all about, where you're playing, right? Whether it's home or away, there's different protocols and stuff, I imagine.
Yeah, it probably goes state by state, but our conference is working on a conference-wide agreement where it can all be mandated for all teams so that, one team has fans, the other doesn't. Like you saw last night, Cleveland had, a decent amount of fans there, which is, it's actually an advantage. So they're trying to level the playing field for my conference.
Love to hear it. And this is full, like this is not 7-on-7s or anything. This is like full contact. No. Yeah. Awesome. Well, look forward to having you back on the show too in the coming weeks if you'll join me. And tough loss, but hey, we'll get them next year in the Kenesha League. All right.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. See you, Mike.
Sir. So, thank you, Zach, again for joining me, and thank you everyone out there for listening. I know we've gone a little bit over, but special guests, you got to do what you got to do. All right. So, thank you for Sports Trading Systems. Trade sports like you trade stocks. Thank you for being my sponsor today. This has been the Fantasy Fallout Podcast, brought to you by What's On Sports. Check out whatsonsports.com for free, educational, intelligent articles. Really get the conversation going. Okay, we got a lot of traffic on there. People are loving our stuff. Go on there, comment. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. You can watch this podcast on YouTube or Facebook Live if you want to see me and my handsome brother Zach. If you're just listening, you can find this on anywhere that you stream podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Pandora, if anyone still uses that. Shout out to Pandora. Thanks everyone for listening. You're all far too kind. I will see you again on Thursday.